order. The first item of business is to ask for a motion approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Motion by Supervisor Conover, seconded by Supervisor Monroe. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Right, and I will turn it directly over to Jeff.
I'll turn it over to Frank.
Excellent. Look at that. We have a lot of turnover this morning.
Do you have any? Where do you want to go first? Let's go with the security. We'll skip around a little bit because I kind of want to end on the court space discussion, because that's really going to be our primary focus today.
All right, so we're moving down to the Municipal Center security update first.
Okay, thank you. The door by the county clerk's office has been moved back. I don't know if everyone has noticed it. We're still waiting on 2 pieces of glass for the top section, but the door is moved. The bulletin board has been rearranged a little bit, but it's still outside of the glass, so that'll work. The fobs are issued, with the exception of a few people here or there. We just haven't gotten together with them yet. Hopefully by the end of this week we'll have all the fobs issued. We do have a software glitch that we're working on. Actually today we had to call the company in. For some reason the elevator keeps locking itself out, and only certain fobs will unlock it. So they're going to hopefully fix that problem today. So I would say by the end of this week we'll be ready to go, possibly mid next week, but hopefully by the end of this week we'll be ready to activate whenever we decide that we're going to activate. And I don't have a set date in mind yet, but I don't know if we want to discuss that or...
Well, the other thing that we need to update is our signage as we come in for the public. And so I have a draft plan. It's with my sign crew. They'll go into the sign designer and bring out some concept, of what the signs will look like, and the departments that are listed and where those signs will go. I have a layout plan kind of drafted. So my intent would be that once I have that proposed signage plan, to run that through, I'll probably run it through Paul, and then once we get on the same page, maybe Paul, Frank, and I pass it by the department heads and get some input or any concerns they have to come up with a final plan. We certainly don't want to lock down those doors until we make sure the public knows which parking lots to go to. And the other intent with modifying the signage is to get rid of some of the clutter that's out there on our big signs as you come in off of Route 9. There's really just too many departments listed. So we're trying to simplify it, get people moving, northward for courts, jail, probation, and moving southward towards DMV and human services. And then as they come around the corner, they'll be directed again by another subset of signs to say which entrance to use for county offices, for DMV, for county clerk, for treasurer's office, and a few other departments. And then on the other side of the road, there'll be a listing for human services or social services, codes, purchasing, and the bigger functions over there. So once that is ready and we work out the plan, we'll want to produce those signs, get those signs in place before we actually lock down the doors. But the goal here is to get all the fobs out and issued, and I think we have all the supervisors' fobs ready to go, so Frank can start issuing those out, and that way we're ready, and then we'll certainly notify everyone before we actually pull the trigger on activating the locks.
And the other thing I would say is this really won't affect anyone. If for some reason we miss someone, or there seems to be a lot of panic going around over this locking the doors, but the main door by DMV will be open at 7 o'clock and closed at 5 o'clock, so people can still get into the building through the security entrance. Where it'll be an issue is if an employee tries to go in some of the other doors and they didn't get their fob activated. But I've sent out a series of emails, a number of emails, and hopefully by the end of this week we'll have a good handle on if we're still missing people. I don't believe we will be, but there's always a chance we're going to miss somebody.
They'll always have access through DMV, or they'll always be able to come over to Frank's shop and find one of his employees to get somebody in. So,
Chairman Garrity, did you have a question?
Yeah. I'm just racking my brain. If you're gonna tell the public which way to go, I mean, it sounds like, you know, having assigned courts, you know, jail, sheriffs, that way, but I know we call it human services, but is that the right signage to send people that way, or should we actually say social services DMV on the sign, the initial sign? And, you know, because we use human services, but a lot of people still refer to social services. And I'm just wondering, Jeff, if people are gonna sit there and say, well, now what's that human services?
You know, that's part of the process. Once I get the, signs drafted, I can get that out to, the full board if, you know, get input. And
Well, rather
that's part of the input I want from the department heads as well,
I mean, if
certainly.
if I'm pulling in, and I think a lot of our clients are for the social services department, correct? And DMV, that seems to be most of them, and then you got your planning. I would think that you could put four names on the one sign that way, and you'll cover just about everything, Board of Elections, 5 names. And you'd have a majority of it covered.
The, like I said, I imagine probably early next week, I will have Alan in the sign shop will have done a draft design in color of what the signs will look like. And, I can get that out, and I'm certainly game for any input as far as what would be most efficient. And we do wanna keep the list relatively small for the larger operations, because like I said, part of the problem with the clutter out there is people will stop at that intersection and read for 30 seconds
But I'm
until
just
they
thinking,
figure out where to go.
don't think of us, think of the customer.
Right,
Think about what the customer needs to see.
right.
The customer needs to see, if I wanna get benefits, I wanna go to social services. The customer needs to know. It's not gonna be the occasional person that wants to go to maybe veterans, but think of your customers. I would hope that you would think of the customers, not catchphrases.
That's exactly the way the intent of how we've drafted them so far, and I'll certainly get out the drafts. The other thing that we wanna do is use the regular, blue sign with a P and a circle and a sign that says public parking, and direct the public into the human services lot, the DMV lot. And once they're there, they can have time to park and take a look at the signs, and we can put other signage over on the building too, you know, if there's some of the smaller departments that are really concerned that they're not on a sign. But the ones out on the ring road, we want, you know, concise and larger operations. And along with that will be, we've got a few of the employee parking lots that are already designated, but we wanna clear up that signage, and basically all the other lots, like this back lot, the nurse's lot, the front lot where it's already designated public, employee parking, we wanna designate that employee parking, that way public doesn't just find a spot in there and then get over to the door and find out they can't get in that way.
Okay. Moving on?
Okay, just a brief update on the solar RFP. We don't have a recommendation yet, but we got some new information from a couple of the proposers. That's been sent out to the working group, and we're trying to schedule another working group meeting. I think we've about exhausted the questions, so, I'm feeling, at least my feeling is that we're getting close to a consensus on the working group, but we have yet to schedule that meeting. My hope is to schedule that, and then, we'll be discussing, you know, how to work this into the facilities committee and into the next round of, board authorizations,
Okay.
if necessary.
Excuse me, may I ask
Yeah.
a question just about that, as you're
Sure.
going through this process? Is there a way that when you come back and you report to committee with your different findings, can you also include, and perhaps you already have, the emergency response piece to it? I recently was reading and heard a presentation on, safety as it related to the solar panels and what happens when there is a fire and the risk to the different departments and emergency responses. Maybe Kevin knows a little bit more about it than I do, but
No, I don't know.
that they get so hot, not having a way to turn off, that it can actually cause cardiac arrest, that there's, it pretty much, there's no codes in New York as it relates to, the solar. And I was just hoping that when it all is said and done, that information like that would be presented to the board.
Certainly, and that hasn't come up in the discussions as yet, as far as like a safety disconnect. And, but I could see where that would be a good, conversation piece with the, firms that are proposing and see what they have incorporated into their systems already. And what I'll do too is I'll reach out to Brian LaFleur and see if he has any information, cause I know he gets a lot of updates statewide and nationally on concerns like that, new fire risk concerns, and see what the recommendations are on how to address it.
I'll send you over the presentation I heard as well.
Okay, great. Okay, I guess what I'd like to do is, I can give the committee an update on the overall court expansion and how that's proceeding. And then we wanna move into our temporary court space discussion, and that's really the bulk of what I wanna show the committee and get a consensus on how we're moving forward. So as you know, we've authorized the bigger, construction project that will be beginning. We're in design development, the board has authorized the bond and the design work, and that is underway. There's been frequent meetings, almost on a weekly basis with, John Norris and his core team of the various disciplines of, electrical engineers, mechanical, and, his architects, and all of the various disciplines, including civil as well for the site work. Those discussions are ongoing, and they're moving fast, as fast as appropriate, and we'll be back to committee on those updates. In the meantime, the Facilities Review Committee has not met yet, but as we said last month, we've got to go ahead, and they're consistently supportive of that effort and the direction the board is heading with the overall bigger project. Now that that's underway, we have transitioned to our temporary measures on how we're going to accommodate a new family court judge and staff in January. And we've had a lot of meetings with court staff, and there's been a lot of discussions with OCA architects as well as the administrative offices of OCA. And we've reviewed quite a few alternatives on accommodating a temporary family court within the existing footprint of the building and in the existing security envelope. So what we have come up with thus far and has reached broad consensus among the local court staff, our engineering team, and our working group that's been meeting on this, as well as OCA architects. We're all on board with a plan to essentially remodel the existing law library, and that's shown on this drawing. And just to orient you, this drawing, this would be the front of the building at the bottom, and we're kind of facing the rear. Just for orientation, this is Martin's office, and that back door by Martin that goes out to the supervisor's lot. So the existing law library is located right here. And this area that's all marked up is the existing law library. And in that library is a lot of bookshelves and tables. And then on this side, there's a second story, a mezzanine within the room. The concrete mezzanine supported by steel shelving units. That's the current layout. Now what we've been able to do here in this concept is accommodate a temporary family court with courtroom space and the appropriate office space for judge chambers and staff, as well as some conference room for attorneys and clients within that space. It will require essentially everything to be removed, the mezzanine to be demoed, the entire space to be gutted, and then construction of these walls, full floor to ceiling walls throughout, and establishing these office spaces. The law library is required to remain open, and we have a burden to maintain that open throughout the duration of the construction. So the concept will be to take the law library. OCA is going to be inventorying it and hopefully reducing the size of the law library. The books that remain that need the hard copy books will be located in the Human Services building in the vacant space we have behind the OFA. and I have another drawing I can just orient you to if we need to, but there's a vacant space, it's about, what is it, 1,200 square feet on the first floor. If you walked in the Human Services building and veered to the right, that's the office for the aging area, and then the vacant space is on the back side of the building behind office for the aging. And that is appropriate space for, installing some bookshelves, essentially relocating the entire, set of books, minus some of the books that they're gonna put in cold storage, and we'll find a location within the building for those. And then there's some other modifications over within the security envelope to accommodate the law librarian and a, computer workstation for some, of the digital type library activities. So with that move, and OCA has approved that move for us. They had some initial concerns regarding moving it outside the security envelope, but once we, Paul had continued discussions with, their architects, and they realized that, yes, there will be a secure, room over there that the new law library will be in temporarily, and, any of the visiting attorneys or public that needs access to it will have access, through some security measures to get in there. So what John Norris and his team did with the layout of this court space is, laid out in a manner where many of these walls are gonna remain for the final, construction that will be underway, so that we're not building walls just to tear them down in a couple years. And this space eventually, with the concept that's approved, will be largely DA, office space. And so John has, where he could, been able to place walls for the temporary, family court in locations that will be reused. And we might have to move some doors around, we might have to reorient and move some of the smaller walls, but in large effect, we're gonna be able to maintain some of this construction that we're gonna implement. Along with that, I've asked John and his team to use materials that can be reused in the final, project spec. So, for instance, the interior doors that are here, we're gonna spec them as we need for the final project. So if we have to remove a door and move it to another location, we're not gonna be buying a second door. We will dismantle it and place it in the new location where we can. Yes, Ron?
And do you have an overlay? Do you have a DA office space overlay?
I can pull that other drawing up, I have it in the file
Sorry, I just
here.
wanna you already have a DA floor plan.
Yes.
At project completion that you're overlaying on this.
Yes.
So you have a good idea of okay, good, that's all.
Yes, and, part of the reason we're doing that is, well, the main reason we're doing that is to save expense. The other thing that we're looking at is, as we discussed last month, we have this, bond that has authorized the bigger project. From talking with bond counsel, and I think we talked about it in the committee some when Larry Paltrow was here, for the temporary operational needs that we have for this, law, or for this family court coming in, we can't use the bond for that. The bond is for the bigger permanent project. We're gonna have a blend of expenses here that really will support the final project, and we'll be able to slide under the bond, and then there's gonna be other expenses that are really only, for the temporary measures. So, for instance, we've already advanced a hazard survey of this area. We sampled for all of the suspect materials, for asbestos and lead, and I'm happy to report everything came back negative. So, I think before we had talked about the need for possibly some, hazard mitigation before we can even begin demolition. That is off the table, so we're gonna save some time and money there. The demolition of the mezzanine is something that's outside the capability of our staff, and we're developing an RFP to put out and have a contractor come in and remove the steel shelving units that are structural and that concrete, mezzanine. Once that's done, then Frank and his staff can get in there and remove the rest of the bookshelves and really gut the room down and do as much in-house as we can. Virtually, I would say probably 80 to 90% of the construction of this space will be done, I anticipate will be done by Frank and his crew. in October, November, December. With the exception of some of the specialty type things that will have to be done, maybe in the judges' chambers. And there's also a few materials that are being spec'd out that we're not used to working with. So some of it we'll have to contract out likely, but the majority of it is the type of construction that Frank and his guys have been able to complete with various remodelings we've already done within the building.
Even more than, I mean, moving doors, and, I mean, that's easy. What's important are your systems. Make sure that your final HVAC systems, your lighting systems, your electric systems are going to apply to the long-term use of the space. Those sometimes aren't as easy a thing to, I see you
Right.
nodding heads. Those aren't so easy to adjust later on, and so if you...
That's been a typical problem with everything we've done in these
Right.
buildings over the last few years.
But I think if you have an overlay of what the DA space is going to look like afterwards, you should have a pretty good idea of what you need to do now for those systems, so that even if you had to put up one or two interior walls later, for example, you're ready for that. That possibility should then...
And that's what we're doing, and, you know, to the extent even that some of these interior walls where we have a door in one location and that door is gonna move, we can stud in the door opening within the wall. And so we're anticipating that. We've already talked through that with John and his team, and we'll be doing as much of the work kind of up front so that we don't have to redo construction. The other thing that this requires is not just that law library space, but we're actually creeping into the hallway. So again, this is Martin's office and that back door out to the supervisor's lot. This is a room we call Kate's War Room. The DA uses this for various activities, you know, court preparations. Essentially, this plan would require a partition wall put in the corridor that right now you can walk down, you know, towards probation. That partition wall would be located just after that door that goes into Kate's War Room, and that would be become part of the secure envelope of the court space. And you can see we've got waiting area in this hallway for the public. We've also got a security desk at this corner. And so it's this space plus that additional hall space that's going to be incorporated into this functional space for this temporary family court.
So the new, the revised DA space will be inside the security perimeter at completion?
Yes, and their space is inside the security perimeter now as well.
When I had met with Judge Krogman, they had some concerns over the entryway in front of the office over in the juror space, where the commissioner and juror's office is. Have you talked with them and addressed that?
Yeah, this actually was updated end of last week.
Okay.
Based on those conversations, and this is as good as it gets, and we've had multiple conversations with Judge Krogman and his staff, and Tatiana carries around a tape measure at all times now, so we're always going over, walking the areas, you know, measuring things out, and we've had a lot of those conversations to make sure they're comfortable. And this is the latest plan. I think John Norris sent this to me maybe Thursday. And, you know, this wasn't you know, one-off effort. This has gone through multiple iterations and a lot of meetings with court staff as well as conversations with OCA. And I'm happy to report that everybody's on board with this and we're really ready to move forward.
What would you need from us? Do you need anything from us today, Jeff?
I think what we need is an authorization from the committee to move forward with our planning on this. The other thing that I have, and I passed out, was a letter of authorization for Clark Patterson Lee. This is another tasker for them. As you know, all of the other tasks, we focused on the permanent court solution to include all the renovations and the big court addition. What we're delving into now is really these temporary measures for an operational need, and so it's outside the scope of work of their prior task task that they've been assigned. The other thing is, as I mentioned, we have to differentiate our funding sources when it comes to the temporary measures, and those are expenses that we can't incorporate under the bond. So that's why when, in our discussions with Clark Patterson and the core team that has been meeting, we need a little bit of flexibility. We're not sure exactly how much effort it's gonna take them to do, a final plan. They're gonna do a final plan, we're gonna put it through county codes. They're gonna spec out a detailed spec for Frank and his guys on how it needs to be constructed. They're gonna do the bare minimum possible, and the fact that we're not going out to bid with the majority of the work will help them give us a very bare bones, drawings and specs as needed for us to construct it. But we need some flexibility to pay them out of a separate task order, for these temporary measures. So what I'm proposing to the committee is a work order for essentially a $30,000, not to exceed, and they will bill against that at an hourly rate. They have, their hourly rates established through our existing term contract with them. And, I think the intent of, the working group and from my conversations with, Mike Swan is really to limit as much as possible those those expenses on the temporary measures that are gonna be hard county dollars versus what we can incorporate under the larger bond, for the incidental costs relative to the bigger project. And if we're doing something that's a temporary measure, but it's incidental to the bigger project, then we can charge it to the bigger project. So I would need the committee to authorize this. One other discussion we'll need to have, and I'm not really prepared for a hard recommendation, but we can get one before finances. Our existing expenses in our project as it stands now. The county advanced money out of the general fund multiple times last year to get us to where we are now. We have paid expenses against those. Now, somewhat after the fact, after we've incurred a lot of expenses, we've authorized the larger project and the bond. And what we need to do is, between now and finance, clarify with our bond counsel as to, what we can apply under the bond for those prior expenses. Because they are all relative, all those prior expenses are relative to the bigger project that is covered by the bond now. What that'll do is free up some county dollars. So this $30,000 cost for design, and then the cost for materials and construction of this, I'm hopeful that we can use that out of the money that the county's already put in there out of the general fund last year. And so that's something that maybe this committee can authorize this and refer it to finance. And then from that point, between now and when finance meets, we can come up with a hard recommendation on how that will all sort out.
Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that? Can we get a motion to that effect? Motion by Supervisor Monroe, second by Supervisor Stroh. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess just one question on this, where you have the judge, and then right next to that there's a conference room. Is that for the public? That one between the judge's chambers and the DA space? I mean, is that for the attorneys and?
Yes, and it would serve multiple purposes, but yes, primarily, because that entrance on this side of the, that is the public entrance. And so they would have a waiting area, essentially. They would have a waiting area just outside the court.
That's really pretty critical that be soundproof between that conference room with clients and the judge.
That's exactly why I need Clark Patterson on board for this design work, because OCA has already given them a list of standards, even for the temporary measures.
Right.
They're not, we've got to build this thing functionally, correct as far as the courts are concerned. Right. And I've already seen quite a few, specs that John has sent me on, wall construction, not even just code related, but we have some, holding areas. The holding areas have to be armored walls, essentially, with, fiberglass jacketed, gypsum board and heavy backers on the, so there's a lot of those specifications, and that's exactly what I need Clark Patterson on board to make sure we build it properly.
Any other questions? Supervisor Conover.
Jeff, when you come to finance, let's have if you could, if Clark Patterson has whatever they have for the most up-to-date numbers they have on the cost, of this renovation, and as well as where the funding might come from. And just one question, that little, on the judge's office, you see that little hammerhead where it comes down and kind of hammerheads around like that. Is that because it's anticipated a door is going to be put there when it becomes a DA office? Because it seems to me that becomes kind of a bit like dead space, if you see what I'm saying. In other words, it's neither fish nor fowl. It'd be better if it was a closet than, I don't know if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I frankly, I can't recall how that got generated.
That would give-
It may be just kind of how the rooms fit
I'd give
together
some
with
thought,
a
I would
square
give
room.
some thought to that space, just in the sense that if it has to exist, fine, make it useful. Make it useful space, whether, even if it's a closet, even if it's a place to put your coat, something, because right now I think it just becomes, it could be storage, because I'm sure they're gonna need storage as well, so.
Okay, anything else? Supervisor Brock?
Jeff, could you tell us, some of these specialty items, like the soundproofing and the what'd you call it, armor thing, how much more expensive are those than just a regular, putting up a wall or whatever?
I really don't have a good estimate right now, and, you know, if these were just conventional construction like we've done on multiple remodeling projects here in our buildings, I could probably give you a rough estimate, but because there's so many particular things that we've never dealt with, I don't know, for instance, I've never spec'd out a, you know, fiberglass jacketed gypsum board that would armor for a holding area. I really don't know. There's some other.
You can go down to Lowe's and check that out.
You know, but what I'll try and do, and, I'll see if John Norris can give me a rough estimate now, at least budgetary at this point. Knowing John, he's probably way ahead on generating an estimate for us. You know, what's critical to move forward this month is the authorization for Clark Patterson to do this work. And some of it will be carried under their prior LOAs, and then the new temporary measures will be carried under this new one. And then what I'll be back, the next round really will be back with a good estimate, and here's what the construction's gonna cost. And at that point, you know, we'll have the design work will be done, and the estimating, the bill of materials will be generated, and then we'll go from there. So I will be back to committee again with a construction cost. I'll see what I can get for finance next week.
Any other questions? All right, then we'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, Jeff, was there anything else under the court expansion that you needed?
I think we're in good shape.
Okay. Anything else?
Paul or Frank, things like that.
Did you have anything else you were Frank this morning?
I didn't.
Okay, in that case, I know Paul has something he'd like to bring forth regarding electric rates, so I guess this would be a good time to do that.
Thank you, Chairman, Chairperson.
Okay, we'll go to Chairperson, let's go.
The county has a electrical contract through MEGA, which is a Municipal Electrical Gas Alliance. A number of municipalities participate. It's bid out on a regular basis, and then they get suppliers. Warren County's contract right now is good through January of 2016. And my original intent had been to start looking at this and plotting and planning when I was going to bring it to you, presumably in the next month, 2 months, 3 months, maybe not even till the fall, waiting for the rates to be really good. I start looking at this well in advance just because I want to make sure I catch some good rates. And much to my surprise, the kickoff with my discussions with the MEGA folks was that the rates are at an all-time low right now. And so I know that you know, and I would love to have given you this information before the committee meeting, but I didn't want to miss this opportunity to at least explore this with you. We're not obligated to move ahead, but I wanted to show you what the rates are in case everybody agreed that we should move ahead. I have a couple of pieces of information I'd like to hand out. You could pass those down, Jeff. Jeff, here's some more. This mega organization that we've belonged to, we joined this a number of years ago, and it is our supplier for gas and electric, and over the years, I have found that they seem to be the best source, and the beauty of it is, it's all bid out, under the Genesee County bid, so we basically are piggybacking off another county, and multiple, as I mentioned, multiple municipalities are party to this, and I think that's one of the reasons we get the rates, and we have the ability to get the numbers that we get. And this, by the way, is open to any municipality, so if your towns are interested, if you're not already participating, you may very well want to look into this. So what I just handed out was first of all, this colored sheet is their documentation to me. I asked them to give me, you know, taking a look back at what the historic average has been, and if that's in the far right lowest graph that you see there in orange. And you'll see that right now, way over to the right, we're at some very, very low rates. You'll only see a period of time in 2012 that's been lower, but I really believe that during that time, and also talking to the gentleman that I deal with that actually through Constellation, he felt that there were some unique situations that yielded that. The winter back then was extremely mild, and a lot of this power is based on not only the weather but also the supplies, and we happen to be in a pretty good area as far as supplies go. You'll see up in the left corner we're considered in Zone F, and that actually is a pretty good area to be in. Some of the other areas aren't as fortunate in their gas and electric supplies. But looking at this, it just seemed to me that and he was saying that these were remarkable in his opinion, and that's why I asked him for this information. They are in mine, as you can see, over the long term, other than this 2012, for the most part, if we settled in on what the gas prices are today, we would be doing very, very well. And that's that second sheet. I handed it out to you just to give you an idea as to what we're looking at. On the type sheet, at the very top, you'll see that our current contract through, and this is in bold, through 1/22/16, we're currently paying .08747. And then if you look down under the proposed contract terms, which are 12, 18-month, 24-month, 30-month, and 33, if you look at the 24-month and you look at the 33-month, you'll see that we're looking at .07126 or .07135, which are respectively, .016, which is a penny and a half or a little better than savings in either one of those time periods. Just so you know what that translates into for Warren County, and of course it does depend on our usage, but looking at our historic usage, next year's budget we could save somewhere in the vicinity of $80,000. So this is why it caught my eye, and $80,000, that moves the needle, in my opinion, in terms of where we are with budgeting. That all of a sudden frees up that money in 2016 that we're spending this year. And it could obviously free up that money in future years, depending upon how long we go forward. One of the things I will tell you is the reason why it stops at 33 months is because that's the end of the bid period, so we can't go past 33 months at that rate. And you may also wonder why, like at 18 months and 30 months, they jump up where the savings isn't as good in those months, and that's because of when they end, right after the winters and stuff. So it depends on the timing of the contract and whether you're getting in some of the lower savings months as opposed to the more expensive months and when you end. And these are also fixed rates. My recommendation is that we've always gone with fixed rates on the electric. As far as I can tell, looking back through my files, that does seem to be in our best interest because it gives us a reliable fixed rates. I think on the gas we did do a variable the last time, but that was, I thought, in our best interest because we didn't like the gas prices at that point and thought maybe we could do better and then wait until the next contract maybe to lock in. But as far as the gas or the electric goes, it seems to me that this fixed rate is very good. So there's no question right here today, these are the rates. Now they will vary because these rates actually, when I say today, that was actually given to me yesterday, so and every day the rates change a little bit, so they will continuously change. I asked him how much difference it would be between now and 3 weeks from now, and he pretty much told me what I expected, and that is, there's no guarantees. He doesn't think they'll change a lot, but he said, if you have a heat wave come up during the next 3 weeks, that could jar the markets a bit and start to change some of the forward rates, because keep in mind, you're looking out over the future. And these rates are based on what everybody thinks is gonna happen over the next period of time, as we go forward. So, you know, in the simplest of terms, though, as I mentioned, if we were, though, to lock in immediately, and I guess that would be my recommendation, by the way, is that we do lock in immediately, even before the board meeting, so it would be a ratification type scenario. But if you folks agreed that we should lock in immediately, you know, I'm excited about this because I'm seeing $80,000 in the budget saved next year. So that's, you know, here again, I apologize for bringing it on short notice, but on the other hand, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it to your attention.
Supervisor Strauss?
Yeah, I mean, these rates are pretty good. And if you can lock these in for a 33-month period, I think that's what we ought to do. 7.1 cents a kilowatt hour is pretty good.
Yes, we recently did it in Thurman as well.
Yeah, at that price?
Yes, I believe that was the price that we did
Yeah,
as
good
well.
for you. Yeah, so I suggest that we move on this.
I agree.
Okay, do we wanna make a motion to that effect, or Supervisor Monroe, did you have a?
Just is there any, minimum required usage? I mean, if we move towards the solar, would that impact it?
Yeah, I've checked in that previously because that was my concern the last time, and what I was told is that when you do the solar, you're actually not changing your usage. Your usage stays the same, and you're simply selling the solar generated power to the grid. So if that's true, and and I guess it would, maybe, I don't know if it varies on the contracts that you sign with the solar companies, but if that's true, our usage would stay the same. But it is a usage-based contract, you are correct.
Well, it actually gives us a little bit of bargaining position, because as we go forward with our negotiations with, remote net metering, solar power purchase agreement, that, if we're locked into 7.1 cents a kilowatt hour, and they're starting off at 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour, which we can always go, listen, why would we pay you more than we're currently paying for market price? So, and I do know that, you can get them down to 6.5 cents a kilowatt hour with, an escalation clause of about 1.5%. So, so it gives us a little bargaining power too. So it's just a good position to be in.
All right, so did somebody want, Supervisor Sieber?
You had said that, excuse me, it says up to an $80,000 savings. But I'm hearing lock in that rate. Is it a guarantee? Like that's what we'll save in the next year, the 80,000?
Yeah, so it depends on your usage. I mean, if you base it on, just looking at our numbers here, if we looked at our usage of roughly this past year, we're looking at our current cost, and here's where it varies a little bit. I called Mary Gallagher. She had 449,000. They're telling me here 464,000, and I think it's the months that we're averaging out. And then under the new rate, we're looking at 376,000 according to them, if we did a 7126 rate, for instance. And so, no matter how I calculate it, it comes out somewhere in the vicinity of $80,000. But if we use electricity, then less electricity, then you're not going to save as much. But I think it's going to be somewhere in that $80,000 range. And then the other thing that will impact it is that I've seen this happen before. The board says, okay, let's do it, and that's why I'm always careful now, is because that 7126 could be 7127 today, or there could be a slight change. But, I mean, it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 80,000, I think, that we save. I mean, is it 77? Is it 84? I mean, this calculation here that he did for me, I think it comes out to 87. I think that may be a little high if I'm looking at, Mary Gallagher's numbers of 449 as opposed to 464. So, it's going to be somewhere in that range, and certainly, as far as lock-in goes, if we said we're locking in, and that is the rate we get for 3 years, that's 7126 or whatever it is today.
And how do you do it? You said it wouldn't go to the board?
Well, we would ratify it at the board, which means Kevin would sign the contract today. So the board would be expected just to say, okay, not debate it at the board. I mean, we don't have to do that. We can wait till the board meeting. If we do, whatever the rates are, they are.
As you know, it's the first time I'm seeing it. I don't know enough about it for me to make an informed decision on it, but I have a list of questions, but it's not for it.
Yeah, I got one other question. I have no idea what that vertical scale is and the two graphs on the bottom. Any idea what that represents? Goes from $20 to $120 or something, and then,
Yeah, I'm not sure because I didn't ask him for that information. The information I wanted was on the right-hand side, and that's what he pointed out to me when he sent it to me. And apparently, when they run these things, they can run all these charts at once.
they really don't label it what it is. But it looks like a good deal. I mean, I'm definitely in favor of it if we can get those rates.
Right, so does somebody wanna make
I'll make a motion.
a motion, and then would that include ratification, Supervisor Monroe?
Right.
We'd be making, and are we looking at the 33 months, just for clarity, so we know what we're, alright, so it's a motion for a contract for 33 months, and it will be subject to ratification at the board meeting. Do we have a second? Supervisor Strow, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Okay. And anything else to come before facilities today? Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Conover and Supervisor Strow, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
This is the Grant Association in town.